Hi, it's Daria. I am so excited about today's episode. In response to community feedback that you'd like to hear more about us, our guest today is the one and only Beck. She is lifting the lid on more than 10 years of property wins, losses, and everything in between. If you've been listening to our show for a while, you'll definitely recognize the hilarious and unfiltered Katrina Jackson, or KJ. She's back with me on the mic, and we don't shy away from the tough stuff. This conversation is packed with gold for anyone who's let someone else's opinion override their gut and their spreadsheet. So buckle up, because you're about to get a front row seat to the lessons Beck paid hundreds of thousands to learn the hard way. All right, so really excited. Today we are interviewing the infamous Beck. Beck has had so much property experience. We've heard her golden nuggets throughout each of our interviews. And so we thought, what better idea than to actually deep dive into Beck's property investing experience. So today we are interviewing Beck. So Beck, before we get cracking, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm Beck. I'm in my late 30s. I've been investing in property for maybe a bit over 10 years. I got into it through my parents. My parents' typical kind of immigrant story came into Australia very young, bought properties. And so when we got old enough and when we started earning money, that was kind of the direction they pushed us in. In terms of my actual property journey, I've bought a few houses, a few apartments. Every time I buy an apartment, I tell myself never again, but I've kept going back to it. And I've bought all over Sydney. I've bought Eastern Sydney, Western Sydney, Southwestern Sydney, Central Coast. If you're not familiar with Sydney, I would say we've got a mixture of quite premier suburbs in there, as well as quite working class suburbs as well. Certainly my first property was very working class.
Cool. And tell us which was the property that got you started and what was the trigger for how you started jumping into the investment game?
The first property I got was in a suburb called Campbelltown. I don't know if you guys remember when Facebook first came out, there was actually a Lion King meme about Campbelltown, where when Simba looks at like the dark area of their kingdom and he says, "Where's over there, Dad?" And the dad says, in this meme, "That's Campbelltown, my son. You must never go there." So that's where I grew up and that's where I bought my first property, the suburb that everyone made a joke out of. And that was what I could afford. And my parents strongly encouraged me to buy it. And so that was the first place that I bought. It was a house, I want to say it was maybe four bedrooms, one bathroom. And it was relatively close to the train station, maybe a 4-minute drive to the train station. And then I started feeling really self-conscious telling people that I had a place in Campbelltown because Campbelltown just had such a reputation at the time. I was just anchored way too much on other people's perceptions. That's the story of my life. And so I bought an apartment in Potts Point, which is, if you don't know Potts Point, it's a much more fun, lively young people suburb. And that was where I first started learning about the horrors of strata. And that was where I first started thinking, all right, I'm not going to buy an apartment again.
I think that's very relatable. I'm sure it's like this in many cities, but Sydney is so tribal in terms of north, south, east, west, and people tend to be quite judgmental about that.
You mentioned that you bought a house in Campbelltown. Can you just explain a little bit about what made you make that decision and
Yeah,
then why you sold it?
sure. If I remember right, I think I had like 16 grand saved. And I remember talking to dad and being like, what should I do with it? And he said, now's the time to start getting into property. And I remember being quite scared and being like, I don't actually know what this will mean for me financially, how much it'll cost and what it will mean for my lifestyle. But buying it as an investment made it a lot easier. And so I bought the property and then I held on to it for, I think it was maybe 8 years. I bought it for, gosh, I bought it for 290 and I sold it because at that point I had 3 properties. And I should mention all of my properties I've bought as a single person. And so at that point, I had 3 properties. And I remember talking to, I don't know if it was an accountant or a broker, I can't remember who it was at the time, but they kind of really made me quite fearful about the fact that I had 3 properties on a single income. And I remember them saying, like, you're investing in a very risky way at the moment, and it's all on you. And if you lose your job, you could really be in trouble. You're not married, you don't have anyone to fall back onto. What happens if you're going to have kids? So I decided to sell the place, and I regret that. I really regret that. That mortgage was very manageable. The house was bringing in more rent than the mortgage was demanding of me. So it was actually quite affordable. All of my loans I've always bought, except for that first one, I've always bought with a 20% plus deposit. So the repayments have been manageable. And that person didn't know my full financial position. I did, but I just let myself be overly influenced by that person. So I sold it, and I sold it for 565,000. So I made a good amount from that. But then 18 months later, it sold for an extra $150,000. Oh, and there's a kicker with this. So if I'd held on to it, I would have made that extra gain. But because I sold it and because it was an investment, I actually lost like tens of thousands of dollars in tax. So I sold here, I lost this gain, and then lost due to tax as well. All because like someone got in my head and made me feel quite fearful, and they didn't know I should have just backed myself a bit more, looked at the numbers again. I obsess over the numbers, but I should have looked at the numbers again and been like, thanks, but I think I'm good. And then find someone else who's not as fear-mongering.
Hey, it's Daria here. Quick favour before we jump back in. We're building something different here. No hype, no BS, just real conversations with real investors. And we want to grow it the right way with your help. So here's what we're asking. Hit follow on Spotify, and if you're loving what you hear, leave us a 5-star review. It genuinely helps others find us. But the real favour? Share us with one person who'd get value from this. That friend who's curious about property, or the one who's already investing but wants the real stories. Send them a text, mention us over coffee, whatever feels right. And if you're an investor with stories to share, someone who wants to help others see behind the investing curtain, reach out to us at Investors in the Wild. We'd love to hear from you. This is all about helping each other grow and learn together. The more people we can bring into these honest conversations, the better off we all are. All right, back to the show. It's just triggered the conversations we had with you, KJ, and with Rebecca, and it's literally the psychological warfare at play, right? And this is a whole new level, right? Because we were talking about agents in the past, we were talking about people who are putting the hard word on you from a sales perspective, but now we're talking about other people's fears influencing you. Yeah. And again, it comes back to taking the emotions out, right? And just looking at, when you're investing, it's investment. There's a lot to be said about the psychological component.
Yeah. And I think also the accountant or whoever that person was, they didn't know your financial position, but they also probably didn't know your goals. And you also probably didn't know your goals at that point as well, in terms of it's your first property. You've never sold a property before. And so I know it's really easy to be like, oh man, I could have made like an extra 150K, but coulda, shoulda, woulda. You'd never sold a property before, so you're not going to know about all of those implications like capital gains and things like that. So almost like you have to live through it.
You do.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of things to mention, and KJ and I have spoken about this a lot, Daria. I don't know if this is a cop-out, but I think because we grew up in areas that weren't as like socioeconomically advanced as Rebecca's area, and just the families weren't as confident. I think KJ and I, when people tell us things, our instinct is, oh, maybe I should be listening to them. Maybe I should be worried about this. Whereas Rebecca's got a very like, fuck you. You're either on the train or you're not, like, get out of my way. Whereas KJ and I think, are much more malleable to other people's opinions. I've been thinking about this a lot. I need to, and I think I'm getting there now, I need to get to a point where I'm really clear on the success criteria of every property. Is it, my success criteria for this property is negative gearing. My success criteria for this property is capital gains. My success criteria for this property is like, it's paying itself comfortably. And then everything else is just noise. Like if the tenants are complaining about foot traffic that was always there, if the agent is saying the driveway is too steep, blah, 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 all of that, I just need to start thinking about other people's opinions as noise. If the property is meeting my success criteria, keep going and just ignore the noise. I need to get to that point, and I think I'm getting. Hey, it's Beck. I just want to recap on a few gold nuggets. The first one is, and I learned this from another investor about a year ago, you might want to consider having a different intention for every property. So for example, this investor had a property where he got negative gearing benefits, a property for his mum to live in, a property for him to live in, and then a property that would bring him in rental income for his retirement. As we've heard in this episode, it can be really useful understanding the intention of the property so that when complaints come in, you can evaluate, okay, does this property still meet my criteria? And how does that impact the feedback I'm receiving? Which leads to the next gold nugget. It's so normal for things to go wrong in property. People who think property is a passive income and you don't need to do anything, my brain does not brain on that. Houses need to be repaired. Apartments need levies. There is always something that needs to be done with properties. It's very normal. It does not necessarily mean that there is something seriously wrong with the investment. But of course, you know your finances better than anyone else, and you know the property is better than anyone else. But just know that it's very normal to get feedback about a property, which also leads to the next point. Be across your own finances. If you've got someone saying, look, this is risky, you might want to sell something. Everyone's got an opinion when it comes to real estate. Know your own financial position. Make sure you are comfortable and be sensible, but also recognize that everyone's going to have their own opinion with property.
So you've had experience with properties and you're saying I need to get to that point. So I think this is just another aha moment around the benefit of having these discussions with these people, like with all of you who have had all of this experience, and yet you're saying you're influenced by other people's opinions, by other people's views, and there's like a level of lack of confidence in those decisions that you're making. I think the beautiful part about talking to people like you and Rebecca and KJ and understanding what those barriers are, I think listening to this can help all of us take a step back and actually weed out all of the noise and focus on what is the criteria, what is the bottom line. And that's why I love talking about this, because it is something that is subconscious. Everywhere we look, we're hearing about investment as an administrative task, like make money here, lose money there, like invest here, take from this, lend to this, da 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 da. But I don't see people talking about what are like psychologically, why aren't you doing these things? And it's almost like we all have to test and learn in order to experience the benefits. But I think the beauty of listening to your story, Beck, is that we can just jump straight to the gold nuggets, which is don't listen to the noise. Be cognizant of your own behaviors and try to keep the noise at bay when it comes to investing.
Yeah, it's like be Beck now, not Beck 10 years ago.
Right.
And the same
Exactly.
applies to me. Oh my God, when you think about how far you've come on that journey. And I think also the how you weight certain opinions is also important. So I also feel like the mental load of when you get bad feedback and things like that. In the beginning, I was so worried about it, and it would be weighing on me. Oh, they're not happy with the air conditioning, and now it's just like all of those things are very normal in the investment journey, and you learn which you're going to take with you and which you're not. So when we're talking about opinions, you said that your parents were quite influential in that first property. How did they kind of support you or talk to you about making the jump to that second one and getting some momentum going?
My parents have really helped me in terms of advice and just being really handy. So the way that they helped me with the second property, I'll never forget. We stepped into it. It was like this small studio in Potts Point. The carpet was green and worn. The walls were like an olive green, but not a fashionable olive green, like a kind of 30 years ago olive green. It was really gross.
Crikey.
And I remember being like, oh my God, Mum, let's just go. And she was like, no. I think you can do something with this place. I think you can fix it up and make it look really good. And my parents have always been that voice of like, don't dismiss right away. But we got in, and this is 12 years ago. For 10 grand, we ripped out the carpet, we put in some floating floorboards, painted the walls and kitchen. We were able to add a lot of value that way. Basically, my parents have been really handy and just shown me how to make improvements and to make a place from like really terrible to nice for not a lot of money. And that's helped me, I think, more than any financial support they could have given, for sure.
Beautiful. Beck, in our conversations about your second property in Potts Point, I know that the feedback that you got from people was another influential factor in your decision-making process around
Yeah.
keeping or selling that property. Can you explain what you did with that property and why?
Good point. I should show you this photo. Okay. So this is the place that I got, right? This door, this hallway in the middle of Potts Point. And so you enter the building here, and this is the main hallway. So everyone who comes into and out of the building has to, sorry, I clearly didn't prepare this slide for this conversation, but you know what I mean. So everyone who has to walk in and out of the building goes up and down this hallway. And it's Potts Point. So people are walking literally all hours of the day and night. And so everyone's walking past this door. The apartment was Airbnb'd out. And I got complaints from people who were staying there. It's really noisy. There are people walking all hours of the day and night. And so that like really stressed me out. And I asked the strata if I could install soundproofing under the doors, and it wouldn't even be visible, but it would make things quieter for the tenants and buffer the noise. And the strata were like, no, you can't make any changes to the door. You can't do it. I should have just done it and like not mentioned it to anyone. I don't think you wouldn't have known. But instead, I just got really stressed out by it and was like, so many people are complaining. This is really stressful. I can't do anything about it again, worrying about opinions a lot. And I ended up selling that place after a year.
I think when we were talking about this earlier, you ended up regretting selling it because from a financial perspective, it was actually bringing in the money. So I'd love to hone in on that point because a learning to not necessarily listen to the negative feedback when you're
Yeah.
looking at it from an investment perspective.
Good point. And this comes back to the point I said earlier, like I should have been really clear on what success looks like for that property, and everything else is noise. So with that property, it was very positively geared. It was so positively geared. The accountant was saying to me, you really should be looking at getting another place because this place is bringing in a lot of money. And I was paying a 30% commission to the person who was managing that Airbnb as well. And it was still bringing in more money than the mortgage, like much more. I
Wow.
remember at one point in time, it was bringing in like $800 a week because it's Potts Point.
Yeah.
And so what I should have done is gone, you know what? The person who's advertising the place in the advertisement really clearly call out, if you're a light sleeper, this isn't the apartment for you. But if you sleep fine with noise, please choose this. And we still would have been okay yield wise,
Yeah.
even if there were fewer people because of how much that apartment was bringing in. So I really regret being panicked. I was panicked by the people saying this apartment's quite noisy. So yeah, I do regret selling that place. I look at it now and the value's doubled, which is very unusual for a studio to double. And again, I paid tax when I sold that place. Between selling the first place and the second place, you lose hundreds of thousands of dollars in property value gains and tens of thousands in tax paid. I would have been much better off keeping those two and just not being influenced by other people's opinions.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about people pleasing. And I think the three of us, we are perfectionists to a certain extent. When we do a job, we want to do it really, really well. And having that perfectionist mentality means that we want to keep our stakeholders happy. Okay. And I'm talking professionally. We want to keep the people in our lives happy. We want to keep our stakeholders happy. We want people to be happy. And I think that, again, another aha moment from a psychological perspective, when you're looking at investment, sometimes you just need to focus on the bottom line. And it's almost taking that people pleasing perfectionist mentality out.
I've wondered if this is an age thing as well. I was talking to an investor the other day, and she's an older investor. She'd maybe be in her 50s or 60s now. And she was saying to me how she was doing a big renovation and she went and inspected the site every day, and she would nitpick at the tradesman's work. At one point, she went and saw the guy tiling the bathroom. He'd laid some tiles the wrong way. She made him take them off the wall and retile the wall. And I said to her, I was like, didn't you feel uncomfortable being there every day and hovering over like the professionals? And she's like, it's my money. I will tell them what I need done. And then I was talking to another investor a couple of weeks ago. He's an older male as well. And he was a very similar mentality. He's like, I can't make everything perfect. People know what they're moving into. If it's a bit noisy, just communicate that transparently up front and stop trying to make everyone really happy.
I think it's, and look, I hate to say this, but I think it's also part of being a woman. Like we're women, we want to please, we want to, and I don't know, this is probably a very controversial statement, but as a woman, we want to be looking after things, we want to be protecting things. And if someone's not happy, we take it quite personally. I think it's not just a woman, it's also the mentality, right? Like we are career-driven women. We've grown up in an environment where it's like we've wanted to perform and outperform and do better than we did before. And I think that mentality, it is really good in some aspects of life. It's important. It's critical, right? You need to have that to a certain extent. You can't just be flopping around all over the shop and expecting things to fall into place, right? But when it comes to certain things, you've got to take that out because it's not serving your purposes. Like I think property investment is that example. I think that we've got to take a step outside of ourselves, and I think it's switching on into a different mode, right? Like we're not perfectionists. We're here to make a non-emotional decision for the most part. We're here to look at our bottom line and to be successful in our craft. And being successful in this craft is not being a perfectionist.
I was talking to an investor. He has got, I want to say maybe $10 million worth of investments. He's got so much. He's got a lot. He's done well. And he's only like 32. He's killing it.
Wow.
And I was saying to him, I've got this one property. The tenants have been in the granny flat for like 24 years or something like that. And they were paying, I think it was maybe $390 a week in rent, whereas it could be getting $550 on the market. And I was losing money on the broader property and thinking to myself, shit, I've got to increase the rent somewhere. But I don't want to increase the rent on these people who have been in here for 24 years. And he's like, they've been getting cheap rent for 24, 20 years, Rebecca. This is a business. You need to set yourself up. He's like, who's going to care about you? He's like, let's think worst case scenario. You could be by yourself when you're 50 or 60 years old. Who's going to be thinking about you and making sure you get cheap rent? And I was like, fuck. And so I increased the rent. I didn't increase it anywhere near market rate.
Exactly.
And in Sydney in particular, we need more ethical and mindful landlords. So it's not all bad. And I don't think you should beat yourself up about it too much, because the other example I wanted to bring up, and I know this because we've been through this journey together, is we've been talking about Beck with a little bit less experience, a little bit less confidence, and we were talking about how age is probably a helpful factor in that. If we flip to this year, you also had some really not so great news about your most recent investment property and the bathroom issue. And I want you to give that example, because I feel like you really were so assertive and you stood up for what was right. So maybe share what happened there and what your response was to it.
I'll share this, but gosh, KJ, would I have been that if it wasn't for Andreas?
Yes. Well, again, experience, possibly gender, possibly age. When you have someone who is really confident backing you, it is so much easier to have those tough conversations.
Hey, it's Beck. Just before we get into this story, I mentioned a few people that I haven't introduced before, and this context could be useful. Andreas is the first person who's mentioned. He's my boyfriend and he's a lawyer. And then I mentioned my brothers. My brothers both run a plumbing business. They are very active in the construction industry. They do a lot of new builds, so they're very familiar. with the kinds of problems that I'm about to get into, and I lean on their advice where they can give me some insider information on what's going on. So what happened with this place? I got a bathroom renovation, quite a big bathroom renovation. That builder was amazing. I loved him. We ripped out the old bathroom, put 2 bathrooms in place. And then my parents slept over the place and used the bathroom. And literally the first night of using the bathroom, both toilets got clogged and they were making like weird noises. And it was very clear that something had gone really wrong in the plumbing. And
Steve didn't just destroy the toilet.
it wasn't my parents. Steve did not destroy the toilet. It was just something went wrong in the plumbing. Let's not think about that too deeply. So I, of course, reach out to the builders who did the bathroom renovation and said, hey, my parents used it for the first time over the weekend. Here's a video of the noises the toilets are making. Straight away, he's really responsive. Yeah, it's clear there's something down the line that's interfering with this. We'll get in and take a look. They go and visit it. They're like, yep, there's something wrong. We'll be back in a couple of days to sort this out properly. I'm like, cool, thank you. They go in, they sort it. They send me some photos of like some stuff that wasn't right in the pipes, a tree root down the line. And I'm like, cool, thank you, really appreciate it, blah, blah, blah. A few days later, I get an invoice for was it $3,800? Yeah, I get an invoice for $3,800. And I thought it was a mistake. So I ignored it. I was like, oh, they sent me this invoice. It was meant for someone else. And then I got a reminder and I was like, wait. They did the renovation. The first time we used the bathrooms, the bathroom broke. And now they're charging me extra to fix the issues that arose when we first used it. And they never mentioned price when they were doing the fixes. Like it was never mentioned. So I emailed and was like, is this a mistake? Like what's happened here? And they're like, no, it was quite a bit of work, extensive work required. And I really pushed them on it. I reckon we must have gone back and forth. Maybe was it like 6-7 times, KJ? It was like 2 weeks of sending each other emails and just me saying, you had just finished the bathroom. We used it for the first time. There should have been some sort of warranty that says if it breaks the first time you use it, it's not. You did not at any point say that this was going to be additional funds. If it was, I would have gotten my brothers to come and fix it for much less. And then to hit me with a $3,800 invoice is just completely unacceptable. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Really stern emails both ways. But I ended up getting that invoice. I think we were both probably dissatisfied by the end of it, but I ended up getting it down to $1,700. Oh, by the way, when I asked my brothers, I was like, how much? Here's what he's charged me for. How much should this have cost? They were like, definitely under $1,000. And so I don't know what happened, but somewhere along the line, I ended up with an invoice of nearly $4,000 for a bathroom that broke the first time I used it. And it was a lot of negotiating to get that price down. And a lot of, honestly, you guys know Andreas, him being like, no, you've got to be firmer in your email. And, I'd be saying things like, I really hope this, God, I feel like an idiot saying this. I really hope this doesn't impact our relationship. I've been really.
Crikey. Oh,
No
no,
worries,
no,
it's
no.
not.
Oh my God, our relationship. The guy didn't give you a quote, and then he's trying to jab you up the hoo-ha to like, oh God.
It was hard though because he did a really good job, didn't he? He
did a great job.
Yeah, but
I love
you've got to fix. I swear to you, honestly, I think this is I hate to say it again. So I'm not like some sort of feminist advocate, but I do think this is a woman thing. And this is honestly something that we experienced in our house. So with my mum's BMW, she took it to the dealer and they were like, it's going to be a huge job. It's going to be thousands of dollars. So mum forked out thousands of dollars and they said they fixed it. It was like an engine thing problem. And then she's taken it back and the same problem arose. And then they're like, we need another $6,000 to fix it. Like, so it ended up costing a third of the cost of the entire BMW. And it's like, but you said you fixed it the first time. We gave you the money and there was no way out of it. Like, there was no negotiation. There was just like, we won't fix it. So you just need to fork out this much if you want us to fix it. And it like, there is something really wrong with that. Like, I think to your point, and I don't know, I just thought it's because she's a woman, she's going to the dealership by herself, and they just think that they can just take advantage of her. I felt like, because it's just very unfair. This to me is like a daylight robbery, right? Like, you've gone in, you've said, fix my bathroom that you should have fixed in the first place. And they've not come and said it's going to cost this much because we've got to do this much more labor. They've done it and then they've tried to get more money out of you. I'm really glad that you had Andreas pushing you in the side. And I think that, again,
And my brothers. Like, it
and your
was really useful
brothers.
having my brothers be like, it should have only cost this amount. And there's been another example, actually. I don't know if it's a female thing so much as like we're not as familiar. Like, I got the hot water heater changed in this place, and I sent the photo to my brothers and was like, hot water heater's changed, that job's done. And my eldest brother replies and he goes, that's not compliant. They've got the hot water heater on the ground. He's like, that hot water heater is going to rust. You're going to have to replace it like faster. He hasn't installed it in a compliant way. And so then I emailed the plumber and was like, hey, it's not compliant. So like, can you fix it? He wanted to charge me.
Yeah. Yeah, they do that. They do
Yeah.
that.
I
So
wouldn't
it's
have known.
almost about we finding our voices, our assertiveness, like putting on that, like that sort of unapologetic conversation, like in the same way that they have the guts to give you a bill for something that should have been done properly in the first place. We should have the guts to push back on that and say, well, no, this is
Yeah.
what it was supposed to be.
Yeah, it's just a bummer because like that builder was otherwise amazing. I loved him. I genuinely think it was just a series of miscommunications. And now I should tell you the thing that I do differently now, if anyone is doing any work, the first thing I ask is, how much are you going to charge for this?
Yeah.
I don't want
Yeah.
surprises.
Yeah.
Of course not. And I think that's just ethical. That's when someone's going to do a job for you, they should let you know how much it's, but it doesn't happen. So you're right. We should be asking that question.
Hey, it's Beck. So that's me finally learning to push back on a bathroom invoice. Only took me 10 years to find my voice. But if you think that was bad, wait till you hear what happens next. I'm talking a building inspector who missed something so massive that when my painter touched the wall... Actually, I'll save the rest of that story for next week. Then there's the $90,000 renovation that made me question if I should actually even be doing property. And the Rose Bay apartment where my lawyer told me about a special levy that was only about $1,700, except she missed a significant detail and it turned into one of my biggest financial nightmares. Part 2, next week's episode, is where property gets messy. I'll share the expensive lessons that no one talks about, and trust me, you want to hear these before you make the same mistakes.